Welcome, guys, to How the Frack We Got Here, a show that takes the news and events of the week and try to make sense out of it all. I'm your host, the most Will Buchanan, and on this show, we simply are all about the facts. There are plenty of news stations out there that simply want to do anything short but inform you. Here at How the Frack We Got Here, that's all we believe in. We go up to the left, we go up to the right, we go up to the middle of independence, we go after all sides because there's more than one side of a story to everything. And you need to know it all in order to actually formulate your own opinion. And that's what we try to do here at How the Frack We Got Here. Thanks for listening, and hold on. It's going to be fun. Welcome, guys, to How the Frack We Got Here, a show that takes the news and events of the week and try to make sense out of it all. I'm your host, the most Will Buchanan, and on this show, we simply are all about the facts. There are plenty of news stations out there that simply want to do anything short but inform you. Here at How the Frack We Got Here, that's all we believe in. We go up to the left, we go up to the right, we go up to the middle of independence, we go after all sides because there's more than one side of a story to everything, and you need to know it all in order to actually formulate your own opinion. And that's what we try to do here at How the Frack We Got Here. Thanks for listening, and hold on. It's going to be fun.
All right, guys, today's date, September the 4th, 2021, and this is How the Frack We Got Here. I'm your host, the most Will Buchanan. On the Frack We Got Here, we do take the events of the week and try to make sense out of it all. Before I do get started, like I said, we try to keep it family friendly on this podcast. We do try to watch our language, however words do fly. However, we also may be showing things that might be just a little too intense for young viewers, so viewer discretion is advised. Aside from that, welcome. So, let's go ahead and get into this dumpster fire we call America. Starting with the one thing that I feel like Nostradamus on, because I said this would happen, and I'm not surprised, and you should be concerned.
A ruling overnight that will now allow the new abortion law in Texas to stand, effectively banning nearly all abortions in that state. President Biden calling the law an unprecedented assault on a woman's constitutional rights, vowing to fight. ABC's Rachel Scott from Texas tonight.
24 hours after the nation's toughest anti-choice law went into effect, doctors and advocates we spoke to say abortions in Texas have all but stopped.
You've already had to turn women away. You've had to deny abortions.
Yep, that's right.
At this Planned Parenthood center in Houston, Dr. Bhavik Kumar normally performs between 20 to 30 abortions a day. Since the new law, he's only seen 6 patients and had to turn half of them away.
Just yesterday, I saw somebody who thought she was earlier in the pregnancy. She was crying. And we began to explore options and think through the logistics of if she would be able to go out of state for the care that she needed.
The new law bans abortions after about the 6th week of pregnancy, before most women even know they're pregnant. In fact, abortion rights activists tell us nearly 90% of women seeking abortions here are past their 6th week. Part of what makes this law so unique is that it deputizes private citizens to sue anyone who aids and embeds an unlawful abortion, from doctors who perform them to drivers who take women to the clinic. Those citizens could then collect a bounty of at least $10,000.
Our creators endowed us with the right to life. Now, we're about to make it law.
Overnight, the Supreme Court refused to put the law on hold as legal challenges work their way through the system. Even though the justices found serious questions about its constitutionality, 5 conservative justices voted to let it go forward anyway, saying there are complex and novel procedural reasons for why it could not be blocked at this stage. 4 justices, including conservative Chief Justice John Roberts, dissenting. Justice Sonia Sotomayor calling the majority's decision stunning, calling the law flagrantly unconstitutional. Now most women seeking abortions in Texas are forced to travel to other states. This clinic in neighboring Oklahoma usually schedules appointments for 15 women a day. Since the law in Texas, that number has more than doubled.
For a 5 to 10 minute procedure to drive 600 miles in the middle of a pandemic. It's cruel.
David, President Biden called this law extreme, but at this point, there is very little the president can do about it. The fact is, there is a conservative majority on the bench. Former President Donald Trump was able to appoint 3 justices to the bench, and this week, all 3 of those justices were in favor of letting that law go forward.
David?
All right, Rachel Scott in Texas for us. Rachel, thank you. Of course, this has been a decades-long fight ever since the Roe versus Wade decision in 1973. Let's bring in Terry Moran, who has covered the Supreme Court for years for us. And Terry, for decades, this has really been a theoretical argument. What could happen if the Supreme Court suddenly leans significantly one way or the other? This 5-4 ruling overnight. But Chief Justice John Roberts, a conservative himself, of course, signaling a willingness of some sort of a compromise, but conservatives, three of them, Rachel just mentioned them, relatively new to the court, didn't buy his argument.
They didn't. That was so striking, David. Chief Justice John Roberts, he's just 10 or 15 years older than the three justices appointed by Donald Trump. But those 10 or 15 years, they mark a huge difference in the Republican Party, the difference between Bush Republicans and Trump Republicans. And the Chief Justice did want the court to take more time to consider what he called an unprecedented law. He lost the votes of those conservatives, and it looks like this will mark the end of what's called the Roberts Court.
And one more quick question for you, Terry. Bottom line here, Texas would appear to be just the first state to do this. A number of other states already signaling they might follow this blueprint, particularly when they see how unique this law is, actually deputizing private citizens.
That's it, David. That's the trick that makes this law so different and so difficult for courts to get a handle on. By deputizing private citizens, it makes enforcement a matter of private lawsuits. And right away, that clever innovation has been picked up. Governor Ron DeSantis and Republican legislators in Florida saying they plan to introduce laws also in Arkansas, Missouri, Mississippi, slowly, basically eliminating the right to choose an abortion across the country in the coming months.
Call me Nostradamus. I sat there. I could go back. What? A year? 2 years? Since I've been doing this podcast, I could go back and tell you guys the moment they ramrodded Brett Kavanaugh in the Supreme Court, I sat there and said this was the possibility. When Trump was in office and was trying to put conservative Supreme Court judges, forget the judges in the ninth and lower courts that he was trying to ramrod through. It's the fact that he was trying to outnumber the number of conservatives versus non-conservatives, because they don't really call themselves liberals or progressives on the Supreme Court, but you can tell who the conservatives are. But he was trying to increase the number of conservatives on the Supreme Court bench to outnumber every other group. He did that with Kavanaugh. He did that with Amy Coney. He did that with Barrett. And again, put Barrett in. Let's not forget, Amy Coney Barrett was ramrodded in after the late RBG had passed away. And again, I have been saying this, guys. I have been saying this so much that if they got the people who they wanted in, especially the Supreme Court level, there would be challenges to Roe versus Wade. I have been saying that. And now, as you just saw in Texas, Texas introduced by far the most unconstitutional abortion law. I mean, first and foremost, they're right. Most women don't know they're pregnant after 6 weeks. Most women do not. So to sit there and ban abortions long before a woman knows she's pregnant is unconstitutional. The other part of the law is that it, like I said, it deputizes private citizens to basically be bounty hunters for anybody. And that's the key part of this law, which again is beyond unconstitutional. So if you drive a woman to her doctor's office for an abortion, you're liable in Texas. If you're the doctor performing the abortion in Texas, you're liable. But now these people in Texas can now go after folks that they suspect are trying to get an abortion, take somebody to abortion, or perform an abortion now. This is beyond crazy. This is it's asinine. It's stupid. It's asking for trouble. And you expect the Supreme Court of all people to turn around and sit there and go, no, we're not, because Roe versus Wade. And we saw, I'm trying to tell you this, guys, we saw exactly what would happen. We saw exactly what a conservative-led Supreme Court will do. They sidestepped it. Out of their entire court, 5 judges, which is not on the bench right now, but 5 of them who are conservatives, all sat there and said, we're gonna let it slide. I mean, yeah, it's got questions. It's amazing when they sit there and say, the law has questionable issues, but it's not enough for us to stop it. When Roe versus Wade is supposed to be the law of the land. Roe versus Wade, for all those, whether you want to hear, whether you don't want to hear it or not, because if you consider yourself pro-life, and I'm not even going to get into that, stupid position. And yes, it is stupid. I think you saying pro-life is stupid, because if you're pro-life, then yeah, there's a lot of things that you're letting slide if you're pro-life. So I'm not going to get into that stupid position. But that being said, with this whole idea that with abortion, it's a woman's choice. Abortion is a woman's choice. I believe as a man, a man should not be able to vote on the rights of a woman. Y'all don't get to do the same, because I'll tell you why. If women were allowed to vote on the reproductive rights of men would be rioting in every state. But women will be like, but it's the same thing you're doing to us. You were literally trying to govern our bodies because for a good majority of you believe that you're trying to save an unborn child. Which again, that goes into a whole other thing of why I believe pro-life is stupid. But again, the simple fact of the matter is they also say at the end of it, it's an interesting point where they're making. And the point that they're making is just like I said before, if it happens on one side, keep in mind, this happened in Texas. Do not think for 1 second that other states are trying to do this. I wouldn't be surprised if my state of Tennessee was trying to come up with an abortion law. I would not be surprised if Mississippi, Alabama, Florida, pretty much the heavy red states, I would not be surprised if they try to do abortion laws similar to Texas. But again, it's such a crazy, unconstitutional law that now we see what happens when you have a conservative-led Supreme Court. This happens. And for the simple fact of the matter, this is what I keep on saying. Everybody's like, well, should we pack the Supreme Court? Yes, we have to now, because we can't get rid of this. I mean, Supreme Court justice can only be removed by retirement, or if they're caught in a heinous crime, they can't be removed any other way. Once usually Supreme Court justices are in, they're in for life unless two things happen. But we can pack the court. We can sit there and just like Trump ramrodded 2 Supreme Court judges in record timing, Democrats can do the same thing. And honestly, with the midterms coming around next year, it might not be a bad idea to start getting some judges in now, because the way things are looking for the Democrats, which I'm going to get into very shortly, it is not looking good for them, because again, they're doing their whole dissension, if you will. Because the one thing about Democrats, I say this all the time, if Democrats are supposed to be so smarter than Republicans, why are they never together on anything? For example, the infrastructure bill, which now one Democrat, who might as well be a Republican, may be the person that derails it all.
He is in the news for a different reason this morning, and that is because he, on this issue of reconciliation and infrastructure, is saying that he wants a strategic pause in some of the movement on that front, right? He's got this op-ed out in the Journal, Why I Won't Support Spending Another $3.5 trillion. Manchin's vote, as you know, is super important. Chuck Schumer needs a yes from him and every other Democrat to basically pass that big spending bill through reconciliation. Please pull out your Manchin to English dictionary for us here and explain what a strategic pause means and what you're hearing from your sources in leadership and on the Democratic side about whether that could even happen.
That all depends on what is going on in the mind of Joe Manchin, Hallie. He did not define his terms, and he did not say exactly what a strategic pause means. The thing to know in this op-ed is that the only red line Manchin put out there is that he's not going to support a $3.5 trillion budget reconciliation bill. Now, that was likely already going to come down, that number, because Manchin's fellow centrist Democrat, Kyrsten Sinema, has said she will not support a $3.5 trillion bill. Beyond that, Manchin repeatedly raised concerns about the debt and about inflation, which means he's created a bit of an obstacle course for himself to find his way to yes. Now, having covered Manchin for many years, the thing to know is that when he wants to get to yes, he finds his way there. The question is, how determined is he, and whether and is he willing to make the compromises necessary with other Democrats to get this to President Biden's desk? Because remember, this is a centerpiece of President Biden's agenda, and defeat for this would be a devastating blow to the president. Now, as you can imagine, Hallie, progressives, including in the House, including in the Senate, are not happy with Manchin. Many of them want this reconciliation bill as a top priority to deal with climate change, to make investments in health care, child care, paid leave, and they are threatening to sink the infrastructure bill that Joe Manchin helped write that passed the Senate. It's sitting in the House right now. It still needs to get a vote in the House. They're threatening to sink that if Manchin sharply curtails or tries to kill the reconciliation bill. Senator Bernie Sanders put out a tweet yesterday responding to his colleague from West Virginia saying if the reconciliation bill goes down, then he's going to fight to take down the infrastructure bill, that these two have to move at the same time. That is a standoff right now. That is where these two sides are kind of at odds, and some of this tension is natural. These two wings want to be opposed to each other, the centrists and the progressives. Ultimately, they need each other to get their priorities into law, and that's where this is going to be a messy process.
And this is what I sit there and say about Democrats, folks. I myself am not a Democrat. I always call myself progressive just because I believe we should be doing a lot. We should be a lot further along in the decisions and issues that we are in. But I get the thing. I mean, the thing I got about Democrats is you guys never seem to be on the same page. Say what you want about conservatives, okay? I'll be dead honest. Say what you want about conservatives, but conservatives do one thing very, very well. They toe the party line. Whatever the issue is, if the I won't say the king, if the head person in the party says it, the entire party goes along with it. It is almost like an ant colony. That one person says something, the entire colony goes with it. If there's one thing you can say about Republicans, they do that very well. Now, in the same sense, the Democrats, however, Democrats always go along with this, when it's election time. It's always that, oh, we're going to do this, we're going to stand together, we're going to do this. Now, keep in mind, the previous election was, well, number one, we are going to start passing. We're going to get a lot of things done. We're going to get a lot of things passed. We're going to work on getting help and assistance for families before pre-pandemic, looking the fact of student loans and trying to raise the minimum wage. Oh, they said a lot of things. Let's be honest, it's election year. They always say a lot of things in election years. But the point I'm making out of all this is that once they're in office, and keep in mind, this is after Trump royally screwed us up. But then again, every Republican presidency screws us up. But keep in mind, there's a slim majority right now, for now, until the midterms in 2022, which again, the Democrats need to be very concerned. But again, right now, Democrats hold a slim majority, as it was already reported. And the fact of the matter is that the Republicans are not going to help them at all. I mean, forget the fact the Republicans are opposed to the $3.5 trillion spending bill. I don't know how, because in the last 4 years, Republicans have spent more than any other Democrats in the last 3 presidencies, but who's counting? But again, for the simple fact of the matter, guys, Joe Manchin, who is a moderate Democrat, which I like to call Republican light, because what are moderate Democrats? They don't believe in actually spending a lot. That's also Republicans. They also believe in limited government power. That's also Republicans. And at the same time, if something is giving more power or giving more freedom to the people, they seem to be against it. This is why I say moderate Democrats, Republican light. And Joe Manchin is one of those. He's, to me, is one of those Republican light folks. Joe Manchin is literally the linchpin of I'm sorry, that's the wrong way to say it. Joe Manchin is the beaver dam when it comes to a lot of these things, because Democrats are not all together. And because they're not all together, this presents a problem. Joe Manchin could be the problem why this infrastructure bill is not being passed. Because trust me, after Hurricane Ida had went through Louisiana, had caused tornadoes in New Jersey, and has caused a lot of destruction in the area that it's went, especially in New York, which again, they were surprised that it flooded. Keep in mind, in New York, the levee system works. The problem was, it was designed nearly 100 years ago. It needs to be updated. A lot of things in this country, infrastructure-wise, need to be updated. That's why the bill's in place. But because it has been ignored for years, that's why the price tag is 3.5 trillion. That's exactly why the price tag is 3.5 trillion. But again, for all those people, oh, that's just too much spending, because that's where Manchin stands on it. Manchin says, oh, I don't want to approve a $3.5 trillion spending bill. Really? Because you approved a nearly $8 trillion war. Yeah, the cost of Afghanistan. The cost of Afghanistan and Iraq, after all said and done, is nearly $8 trillion. But, Congress approved that with no issue, and gave the Pentagon a bigger budget increase. Which, again, keep in mind, the Pentagon has yet to account for any money that it's spent in the last 30 years. It must be nice to be given an extensive budget somewhere where you don't have to be audited or have to explain where you're spending the money. But again, with Joe Manchin, guys, it's amazing to me for the simple fact of the matter, he's against everything progressive. And now he is threatening to derail everything. And what more can be said in that situation? For the simple fact of the matter is, a man is willing to derail everything just because he doesn't want to spend more money. And I thought to myself, that's a very conservative answer, sir, to give, that you want to approve another $3.5 trillion, because that number is only going to get bigger as long as the problem gets ignored and not repaired. And in 2021, the price tag is now $3.5 trillion. Eventually, it's going to get higher because future administrations and governments are going to have to deal with it if it's not dealt with now. But again, it's Joe Manchin. I am not surprised that he's always against everything. The day he actually agrees to something will be the day I'll be surprised. But then again, he actually might be turned Republican if he's not already. Because I'm sorry, when it comes to centrist and moderate Democrats, it just seems like Republican tendencies. Just saying. But anyway, moving right along, guys, I did want to cover this story as I did in the midweek review of Elijah McClain, is the fact that finally, it took forever and a day, but we finally got some indictments, and hopefully we'll see some cases. The only thing I didn't agree about was the murder charge, charges that were levied against them, but check it out.
And 2 paramedics have now been charged in the death of Elijah McClain, the young black man walking home, officers stopping him, claiming he was acting suspiciously. He was placed in a chokehold, paramedics injecting him with ketamine. He went into cardiac arrest and later died. Here's ABC's Marcus Moore.
2 years after Elijah McClain's death following a takedown in this dark Colorado street, a grand jury indicting 3 Aurora police officers and 2 paramedics on charges of manslaughter and criminally negligent homicide.
We're here today because Elijah McClain is not here, and he should be.
Officers stopped the 23-year-old massage therapist as he walked home from a corner store. A 911 caller reported he looked suspicious.
I know, he looks sketchy.
McClain's family saying he wore a mask because his anemia often left him feeling cold.
Stop right there. Hey, stop right there. Stop. 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 I have a right to stop you because you're being suspicious.
Officers grabbed Elijah, later claiming he tried to grab the officer's gun. During the encounter, police using a carotid chokehold to subdue McClain as he pleaded for his life.
I can't breathe. I'm just different. I'm so sorry.
You reached for your gun, dude.
I have no gun.
That's where I tried carotid.
I don't do that stuff.
Paramedics then injected McClain with ketamine, a powerful sedative. McClain stopped breathing and 6 days later was taken off life support. With outrage building during last summer's protest for racial justice, the governor ordering a criminal investigation. Tonight, Elijah's mother reacting to the indictment.
It is a step toward justice because, I'm still praying for them to be in prison. My son's murderers and their accomplices all need to be in prison for what they did to him.
David, the Aurora Police Association tonight saying McClain died from a combination of his decision to violently resist arrest and a pre-existing heart condition, adding, our officers did nothing wrong.
Sure, your officers did nothing wrong, except apprehend somebody for no reason, and then the paramedics decide to inject them with ketamine, a very powerful sedative. Ketamine, something that's also used on animals. Again, yes, it's 2 years. It is 2 years. It's been 2 years since it's happened. Yes, we're finally seeing some indictments. manslaughter. I'm just like, I'm not gonna lie, because I thought about it first. I'm like, manslaughter is what you know? They murdered this. They murdered this man. But then, I mean, the most you can probably go for from a lawyer standpoint, I mean, you can't go for first degree. You can't really go for second degree. So the only murder charge that would actually make sense if the DA decides to pursue it will be the third degree, which means that he was killed in the act of someone's actions. Which third degree murder would be the only thing they could try to push for. But I'm surprised they did it. But with that also being said, though, it's the whole thing of just, again, this came right in the midst of when we were amidst of just black men being killed at the hands of police. In this case, he was just walking, had a mask on, and yet an overzealous law enforcement officer decided to stop. And I remember watching that story, and I just remember the comments on it where it's, well, why didn't he comply? Why didn't he stop? Because he didn't have to. Here's the thing. Just because an officer says, hey, wait a minute, you're not inclined to do anything. That's when he sat there and said, I have a right to go where I'm going. He wasn't detained. Here's the thing. Here's the thing that a lot of law enforcement officers don't like that, I keep telling people, know the laws. In whatever city and state you're in, know the laws. Why? Because law enforcement officers, not all of them, but a good majority of them, are expecting you to be ignorant of the laws. They're expecting that because they're a cop, they have a badge, they have a gun, and they feel like they have this overwhelming sense of authority that whenever they ever yell or tell you to jump, they expect you to jump. Which I don't blame Elijah for. I have a right to know where I'm going. He says, hey. I was like, no, sir, you're not. Are you detaining me? Because I said to officers all the time whenever they used to get me, I'm like, am I being detained? Well, I just want to ask some questions. Okay, am I being detained? No. Okay. Bye. Because you're not being detained, you have no reason to speak to officers. Unless, like I said, unless they told you that you're being questioned and it's happened to me. Actually, I'm pretty sure it's happened to every black person. And that's why I keep telling people, I said, you want to know the difference between us and between black people and law enforcement? Every black person you run into has a law enforcement story that's horrible. We are the only group of people out there who I am fairly concerned for every African American out there, they have a bad story of dealing with law enforcement. I am fairly certain of that. But the point I'm making out of this is that Elijah McClain was killed. He was. And the fact that we're finally getting indictments for the officers and the paramedics because they have to explain why they were using a sedative, why they called for a sedative in this case, and at the same time, why do they use it? And I mean, yeah, there needs to be jail time all around. And I keep on saying, if you take a life, then your life is forfeit. But that's just my way of thinking. However, it's amazing to me, like usually out of most police departments, when they ask for comments, they try to sit there and say that the actions of McClain and his pre-existing heart condition led to his demise. Also, it had nothing to the fact that he was chokeholded and actually given ketamine that actually led to him not breathing anymore. Right. It's somehow all his fault. And that tells you everything you need to know about the Aurora Police Department. And trust me, they will probably try to sit there. And this is their lawyer defense 101. When the victim is not here to defend themselves, they shred that victim's character. Trust me, I have seen that happen when they try to turn around and sit there and say, well, we need his school records, or we need this, or we need that. We need to find out exactly, is there a pattern of behavior so we can justify why we killed him. They do it all the time. We should not be surprised by this. But we're actually going to follow that story as it goes along. The other thing I wanted to get into is that if you're trying to search for a car right now, and again, I stress this very heavily as a person who loves cars, now might not be the best time to buy a car, but if you ever want to sell a car, it's Christmas.
General Motors temporarily coming to a halt. Production at 8 major plants put on pause, including 2 plants that produce the company's best-selling vehicle, the Silverado pickup. It's all because of a worsening shortage of computer semiconductor chips used in a variety of car parts.
Now we got the chips that are shorting what's being put out. We're talking about vehicles having like 1,000 chips.
GM not the only one. Ford, Toyota, and Nissan also pumping the brakes on production. The computer chips are mostly made in Asia, where right now the Delta variant of the coronavirus is hitting hard, forcing plant closures. The domino effect quickly extending to the big three in Detroit.
We're going to have this start-stop situation where it's like the lines come back on, they get shuttered back again. Some automakers, they're reworking their vehicles to have fewer chips. Certain options aren't even being offered, but it's not been enough to actually, completely curb all of the issues.
How does this impact you? With less supply comes increased demand, sending car prices skyrocketing. The average price of a new car last month was an eye-popping $42,832, and supplies are only tightening. Car dealerships had just under 1 million new vehicles on their lots during August. That's 72% fewer than during the same month in 2019 before the pandemic. The bright spot? If you're looking to sell a car, now is the time. With so few new cars available, people looking for new wheels are paying a premium for pre-owned, with prices up 29% from a year ago.
So how long will this last? Some experts believe we'll be feeling the effects through all of next year.
Yeah, pretty much. With the computer chips coming out of Malaysia being put to a screaming halt for now, yes, prices among cars, especially if you're trying to go for new cars, are going to have a higher premium. But if you're trying to sell cars, you're trying to sell a car you no longer need anymore. Hey, then right now it is definitely a seller's market. Trust me, as a person that loves cars, it's a little heartbreaking because, again, you don't want to pay $10,000 more for a car that's more than its price worth because depreciation value will leave. And I always thought that was great. The depreciation value starts the moment you drive the car off the lot. So I would say for those, if you have the money to do it, go for it. But if not, it might be a good time to hold until the semiconductor shortage ever gets resolved. However, because a lot of our semiconductor computer chips do come from overseas, again, that could be a long time considering the fact that the Delta variant is still out there, and it's causing a whole lot of issues, unfortunately. But again, if you're trying to sell a car, not a bad time. But moving right along, guys, I did want to cover this story. Again, a couple of stories I have involving teachers. This one, again, this is why I'm a little bit concerned about, going to school during a pandemic because we have already seen countless stories of parents losing their minds when it comes to mask mandates, especially in terms of COVID. We saw that here in Williamson County in my home state of Tennessee, where parents were losing their minds because the school board decided, hey, mask mandates are needed. Why? Because our freaking numbers in cases in hospital bed space is diminishing. COVID cases are rising. It only makes sense that our children that we love and care for so deeply need to be protected in schools wear a mask. And Williamson County parents freaked out. This parent, however, took it a little bit more extreme.
Wednesday afternoon. Thank you for joining us. I'm Priscilla Casper. New at noon, a local business owner is continuing his mask mandate fight, this time inside of a school. News 4 Tucson's Robbie Reynolds is live now with more. Robbie.
Yes. Now, I just want to get out of the way kind of what the situation is here right now. Police are on scene at Mesquite Elementary School here. Classes have resumed as normal, but there was an incident involving several people coming onto campus that happened earlier today. I'm going to go over, according to the Vail School District, they told me what they know about the situation so far. So, in Arizona, when a school has a positive case of COVID, it's required that they report it to Pima County Health Department and also any children who had close contact. Now, Pima County can decide if a child did have close contact that they will need to quarantine. So this morning, a child was asked to quarantine, and then a Tucson man, the child's parent, and one other person and the child came to the school. The Tucson man, that individual, had posted on Instagram Live his displeasure with that decision to have that child be forced to quarantine or be asked to quarantine in that situation. And then he came over to this school and then on that Instagram Live feed was threatening to perform a citizen's arrest of the school's principal using zip ties. I'm also told by the Dale School District, they're telling me all this information, that individual and the people with him walked into the principal's office. They sat down, had a conversation. The principal listened to their concerns, asked them to leave. They would not leave, so the principal left the office at that point. Those individuals, that parent, the child, the other man, and the other person, and the Tucson man who posted on Instagram Live, they are no longer at the school. And that is the situation right now. Police are looking into it. I'm told the principal was not harmed in this case, and that they have not decided yet if they're going to press charges against anyone in that situation. That's just everything that the Vail School District had told me about what happened right now. As you can see, police are on scene. So we hope to learn more information. I'm actually just about to speak to the school superintendent, learn a little bit more about this situation. But for now, reporting live, Robbie Reynolds, News 4 Tucson.
Crazy, isn't it? That apparently that if you have COVID conditions, that they will turn around and a parent decides to take it upon themselves and say, wait a minute, so my kid can't go to a field trip because he's in quarantine because of quarantine procedures? Yes. Well, I want to go over and talk to the principal. But let me take two buddies, some zip ties, just because I may not like what the principal says, so I want to go ahead and make some adjustments. No, I'm surprised that they didn't sit there and say. I'm wondering the whole time, why wasn't anybody arrested? Because that's the first thing I'll be sitting there saying. Why wasn't anybody arrested? It's the whole thing of, okay, you're in the room and you're trying to discuss with them why the student you just sent home is quarantined is back. They don't like the answer, and they were going up there to do, and I mean this ever so hard, and I mean this ever so nicely, a citizen's arrest. Are you kidding? A citizen's arrest? That alone should have been a screaming warning sign that, okay, they didn't come here to talk. They came here because they wanted to believe that they are empowered. And here is the problem with this whole situation. That just like the abortion the abortion issue that's going on in Texas, a lot of people think they should be empowered to make citizens arrests. Let me tell you something. First and foremost, nobody really does citizens arrest anymore because anybody can do one. There's no special conditions. Anybody can do one. But here's the problem about this. You're not law enforcement. You're not a trained individual. You don't have any authority to arrest somebody. So therefore, you just going around saying, well, I'm making a citizen's arrest, like that's going to hold up. This isn't the Wild West. And again, this could have went so different. This could have went so wrong. And at the same time, I'm just surprised they sat there and said, well, law enforcement's on the scene. I'm like, are they going to arrest somebody? Because that's where I am on this. Because they just threatened to assault a school official. How are they not arrested? When you bring two people with you to go talk to one person, you're not going to talk. That is a sign of force. That is a sign of you saying, I'm going to do something, and depending on your answer, you may not like what happens next. That's what that sounds like to me. Oh, they got comments. I'm so sorry, guys. I didn't see comments. These are the same people that think it's unconstitutional these are the same people that think it's unconstitutional to make them wear a mask. Yeah. Let's put a bounty on people who won't wear a mask or send their kids to school sick with COVID. It is amazing to me that we're not, if all things, and I say this ever so nicely, that they are more gung-ho about sending their kids to school in a pandemic situation than trying to protect them. And I just thought that was crazy. But you're right, Miss Tanya. You're exactly right about that. We should be doing that, but we won't. We're too busy trying to keep women from having choices of their own bodies. And that alone, I'll still sit there and say this: a man should not have a vote on what a woman does to her body. If anything, that should be women voting. I mean, because I'll put it this way: if a man's gonna vote on a woman's body to decide to do what she wants with it, should be vice versa. Women should be able to do the same thing. But God sit there and say, "Well, no," and I said, and if you are pissed off about that, if you're pissed off about that statement I just said about, I'm sorry, that was so wrong. If you are pissed off about that statement I just said, then you understand now why women should be very angry and should be very concerned. But the simple fact of the matter is, this whole pro-life stance on abortion is BS. It really is. But aside from the other teacher, we got one principal that's trying to avoid, literally being citizens arrested by 3 other people. We have another teacher who just simply wants to teach and teach these kids the right way. But again, you guys know critical race theory? Yeah, it's coming around again.
Hogan thought she made it as the highest-ranking black woman in her school district.
But this year, it's turned into a really hostile environment. It's been really hard to focus on what matters, and that's really making sure that the kids are well.
Hogan led diversity and equity programs in the Rockwood School District just outside of St. Louis. But last spring, in the midst of the American uprising over George Floyd's murder, parents accused Hogan of pushing critical race theory.
Does the district teach critical race theory?
No, Rockwood does not teach critical race theory.
It's a decades-old study on systemic racism, almost exclusively taught in law school.
I feel this is culturally sanctioned discrimination.
The resistance got so severe, the district hired private security.
Being told that my work is ungodly and immoral, questioning my credentials, questioning my ability to be here and to do this work, calling me a liar, saying I'm racist against white people, screenshots that were being sent to me consistently. It looked like a lot of just mean, very hurtful things.
Hogan decided to leave her dream job.
It was heartbreaking. It was giving up the work that I really loved.
Dr. Terry Harris was Hogan's boss, and he made a different choice: to stay and fight in this district that serves 22,000 children and is 75% white.
Was part of you staying on because you just don't want them to win?
Because if I leave, then I'm not advocating for all students anymore.
So do you believe that a reconciliation is possible?
100%. I think that we can restore this. Someone has to believe that their education is going to be effective, it's going to be fair and just.
Parents who called for Hogan and Dr. Harris's firing declined NBC News' request for an interview.
Rockwood's administrators make the curriculum public online and have repeatedly told parents they don't teach critical race theory.
Black parents are worried as a new year starts without Hogan.
I'm the only black person in my class. They are running her away because she was only doing her job.
Is there something to be said for fighting the good fight?
I'm still fighting the good fight. Making the decision was really a choice of choosing myself, but also knowing that I'm still committed to the work, that I'm still committed to being a person who talks about race and equity. It doesn't stop just because I left Rockwood.
Antonia Hilton, NBC News, Rockwood, Missouri.
That's truly, and that's sad. I mean, okay, first and foremost, if you are an educator, first off, hats off to you. It is the greatest profession, but it's the profession that does not get its due. For the simple fact of the matter is, you decide that you want to dedicate your life to teaching the next generation, teaching the right way. I have a very soft spot for educators, just because without them, I would not be the person I am today. So I always want to give them their flowers. That also being said, for the last time, for all those parents out there, critical race theory isn't being taught in schools. It's a law school. It's a law school class that is taught in law school. And unless your child has somehow magically, breezed through elementary school and high school and somehow taking law school before the next juice box, kudos to you. But for the rest of the world, they'll never see it. Which actually makes me think for a second, maybe we need to. And I'm just being honest. For all these parents, mostly white, and some black people, because some black people out there who just simply want to get clout or make a name for themselves are against critical race theory, even though, again, it's not being taught in schools. But, you know what? At this point, I think it needs to. And the simple thing about it was, this previous teacher I was just showing was only teaching diversity and inclusion. Because I believe if you teach other kids about other races and other races, cultures, and people, they become socially aware. And if they become socially aware, then they become compassionate. And then that's how you get respectable adults. You don't get these people out here, for the lack of better words, I don't like you Arabs. I don't like you Muslims. You black people are... Yeah, go ahead and say it. But again, it's amazing to me when it comes to critical race theory How many parents are against something that's never been taught in schools? So because she's teaching diversity, anytime a white person hears diversity, I'm just fairly honest with you. The way a white person hears diversity is the same way a person hears nails on a chalkboard. For some odd reason, you find yourself being offended. Why? For the simple fact of the matter is, they're teaching them inclusion, the things that we should be teaching them, the things that we need to be socially aware of and socially cultured about. We should be. But now they're coming after this parent because she's teaching something that's nowhere close to critical race theory, but because diversity and inclusion, some parents believe, oh, you're trying to teach critical race theory to our kids. Here's my thing. If she was, so what? What's the worst that could happen? Your child becomes aware? Does your child hate being white? Does your child hate? I doubt this. And that's why I said it comes down, they always, and it's been said in so many shows and movies and books, things of that nature, people always fear what they do not understand. But when given the choice to understand, they would rather choose fear. That's just being honest. And so with this situation, it's like, yes, she wasn't teaching cultural race theory. She was simply teaching diversity. She was showing them that there's more than just your race out there. And here's why you should know. I'm sorry, America's not all apple pie, which by the way, apple pie is effing disgusting. But again, America's a big culture, it's a big melting pot of culture, diversity, races, and immigrants. We should know everybody that wants to live here because again, we're not just simply one race. It's not that hard, folks. But speaking of things I want to bring up before I get to our feel good news segment, with this last story I had, which I thought was very interesting, was that black unemployment rises in job reports. So the recent job report came out, which a lot of people are not, how can I put this ever so nicely, that it wasn't a very bright jobs report, not the jobs report everybody was expecting, but this story, which I found at NBC News, again, black workers, and this is the top report, black unemployment rises in jobs report decides, despite more job seekers, black workers with associate degrees saw an unemployment rate of 6.9 last month, while the jobless rate among white high school dropouts was 5.8%. Now, of course, this can also be found on NBC, but again, I just want to point this out, just some excerpts from it. The 2021 job report in August showed that black workers are facing an even bigger struggle to find unemployment compared with job seekers of other races. While the rate of unemployment among black workers rose in August to 8.8% from 8.2% in July, the white unemployment rate, meanwhile, fell to 4.5% from 4.8%, and the Asian unemployment rate dropped to 4.6% from 5.3%. And also, the unemployment rates for Hispanics and Latino workers inched lower from 6.6 went to 6.4. Now, the problem was, and this is actually the actual unemployment rates right here, says a lot. That we literally went from 9% to 8.8. Of course, Hispanics I'm guessing went from probably in the 7s to 6.4. Asians from under 6 went to 4.6, and whites went to 4.5. So at this point, Asians and whites and Hispanics have had lower rates and unemployment rates than we have, while we're still standing at a strong 8.8. And again, it's amazing when they sit there and say in the article that employers are the problem, that the unemployment workers among black people are with associate degrees exceeded that of white school dropouts. So I always wanted to point this out because, again, it says it right here, quote unquote, specifically black workers with an associate degree saw an unemployment rate of 6.9%, while the jobless rate among white high school dropouts was 5.8%. The unemployment rate across all races for people without high school diplomas or who are 25 and over was 7%, while the jobless rate for black people with high school diplomas in the same age category was 10%. These numbers challenge the long-held belief that greater educational achievement will be rewarded in the workplace. So again, I have to bring this up because the author of this article says something which I actually do like and enjoy. A lot of people find jobs, but a bigger share of those went out to those who went out. Let me try it again. A lot of people find jobs, but a bigger share of those who went out looking didn't. So the black unemployment rate has been going up because employers are still passing over black workers. When you look at those numbers, it's clear what employers are saying. We want workers, but not exactly. And it's hard to argue with that. I mean, truly, guys, it is so hard to argue with the fact of what that was, because a lot of people sit there and say, well, black people are lazy. Well, they're not going to work these jobs. There's plenty, and this is the one for all the conservatives out there. There's plenty of jobs out there. Folks just don't want to work. Yes, there's plenty of crappy, low-paying jobs that'll always be available, because nobody wants to work for $9 to $10 to $11 an hour when your rent is over $1,000 a month. You literally have to work 60 hours and over just to barely make your rent. And that's not counting the fact of food, utilities, and an alarming need to wash and utilities, things of that nature. So again, but it does bring up a very interesting point that employers are passing over specifically black people who want to work, who have higher degrees. I mean, what other answer is there? Because I've seen it before. I've seen qualified African Americans who have bachelors and masters and PhDs get passed over for those with less. But again, when it comes to employers out there, it is amazing when they sit there and say, and the author of that article says it so eloquently. They're saying they want workers, but not the kind of workers we want. Because you know what's so funny? That if you work a low menial job will always take anybody, because all they want is a body. So again, if you're trying to find a better job, that was always the lie. I won't say the lie, because that used to be the stigma. If you want a good paying job, you have to go to college. You have to get a degree. That gets you a good paying job. There are plenty of African Americans out there right now with college degrees that are still struggling to find work. Explain that, employers. And this is why I sit there and say, before we go into our feel good segment, guys, that always have a backup plan. Trade schools, nothing wrong with trade schools at all. Why? Because being a contractor, a lineman, a foreman, a plumber, electrician, an auto mechanic, those and more. There's a lot more out there than just that as far as trade schools go. But trade schools will never go out just because those are lucrative, high-paying careers. And I always tell this to everybody, it is great to have a dream, no matter what you want to do. Just have a trade. Learn a trade as a backup, because you never know how useful those trade skills are going to be. So, with that being said, guys, we're going to move on to our feel-good segment, because usually doing the How Frack we got here, we usually cover a lot of things that sometimes doom and gloom, sometimes, make you question your sanity or question the human race and where we're going. But, it's the weekend. It's actually Labor Day weekend. So if you have the 3-day weekend off, kudos to you. If some of you have to work, then if I could talk, that'd be great. It's my intention that your work day goes fast. But I do hope on Monday everybody can enjoy a little bit of the work, a little bit of the holiday, because I will try to do my best to do that. But again, what we try to do on the new segment is try to give you guys some hope, make you feel great that there's a little bit of good humanity left in us, and just finding random acts of kindness, because again, that'll actually help the world more than anything else. So I want to start off again with the work that's being done with the release in Hurricane Ida, especially Louisiana. And also, if you do want to help help out with the relief efforts, if you can, definitely check out the AmericanRedCross.com, and you'll be able to see how you can help those people.
Country answering the call. Tonight, from the Northeast to the South to the West, Americans answering the call for help where it's needed most. In Jean Lafitte, Louisiana, helping to hand out water. In Houma, Louisiana, this woman packing up donated supplies. And this mother in line, smiling, grateful, holding her 1-year-old daughter. In Ocean Springs, Mississippi, residents serving free home-cooked meals at the Gulf Hills Hotel for hundreds of evacuees.
To be able to provide for these people, I think, is touching a lot of hearts right now.
And in New Orleans, the team at the World Central Kitchen preparing tens of thousands of meals.
People can't cook anything, no grocery stores are open, and so there's a huge need right now.
In Wilmington, Delaware, the Brandywine Valley SPCA now helping airlift more than 300 dogs and cats from the south. They had been up for adoption, but were in the path of Hurricane Ida. They're now safe again and waiting for their forever homes. And in Cranford, New Jersey tonight, the Cranford Fire Department rescue team wading through the water, rescuing 3-month-old Jolene Callie, her entire family pulled from the floods. Across this country tonight, Americans tested. The need only growing tonight. So many communities. Great.
And it's a fair point. I mean, yeah, Hurricane Ida has definitely left the trail of destruction there. But it's always great to actually see people come together. And again, whether it's feeding them, whether it's clothing them, giving them what they need, or just helping them pick up after the disaster's over. That's what I say about random acts of kindness. They are always needed and they were always wanted. Speaking of things that I never thought I'd see before, the Paralympics, which are still going on in Tokyo, actually had a marriage proposal, which, again, I thought was pretty cool. Because I've never really heard this. I mean, I've heard of runners, but I've never heard runners have a guide. And it was kind of cool to watch this. Like I said, I've never watched the Paralympics before, but I decided since I was in the gym and the TV's right in front of me, why not? And so I happened to see this when I was working out, and I thought this was pretty cool. And again, I just love seeing stuff like this in the places you don't normally think would happen, but it's always cool to actually see it happen.
Heat of the women's 200-meter T11 class. End of the fourth heat of the women's 200-meter T11 class, guide Manuel de Vega proposing to the athlete that he partners, Kiula Semedo. Although they didn't qualify for the event, they shared a moment that I would say is even more special than a medal. How sweet is that? Love at the track in Tokyo.
And mazel tov to the happy couple. But let's be honest. Yes, that was actually a blind runner, and that was her guide. That was with her during it all. I just want to stand there and say, first off, congratulations to the happy couple and being engaged. And you know that man, because you think a woman gives you hell when she can see you. Imagine the fact of how much this man had to do for a woman that, look, you had to use your words. She couldn't see you, so you had to be freaking Casanova to literally and figuratively get this woman's attention, because she wasn't about to pay you no mind. But again, I digress. Just little joke, women. Little joke, ladies. Don't get mad, because y'all know y'all put us through hell. But again, mazel tov to the happy couple for them being engaged at the Tokyo Olympics. So the last story I got, guys, which again, I love seeing stories like this, just because we see rookies go in the NFL and they go in the NBA or NHL or Major League Soccer or European football or European Premier Leagues, if you will. And they've always, for the ones that always stand and said, when I make it big, I'm gonna buy my mom a house, I'm gonna buy my mom a car, I'm gonna buy my old man this, or I'm gonna do that. I love stories like this because there's a certain genuine about them where you see some athletes remember all the sacrifices their parents put in, and they just want their parents to be comfortable. I see the same thing in myself, not as far as sports go, because let's be honest, I'm not going to try to sit there and second play sports. But I always sit there and said, let me make it in life. My dream was always to put my parents in a nice little resort home somewhere off the coast and let them enjoy their golden years on a beach somewhere and, chill out, never have to worry about anything again. That's always been my dream, to be able to take care of my family that way. And in this case, this young man decided that he wanted to pay it back to his mom in a special way.
How's it going? Nice to meet you. Hello. I'm Adam. Nice to meet you.
I'm in. Thank you. How am I gonna take it home?
It's for you. You're gonna get a sip. Yeah. Go ahead, take it. Go ahead, take a shot.
That's nice of you.
Of course. You know I got
Thank you. Are you for real?
Yeah.
Let's do it. Okay.
I want to catch you off guard.
All right. And I'm on camera.
Behind the wheel.
Yeah, we want you to take it for a spin.
Yeah. Do it.
Okay. Oh, wow. That is crazy. Oh, wow. That is nice. That's shiny.
Yeah. Nice. This is how you change
Wow.
gear. Yeah, it's pretty
A
dope.
lot of seats.
Yeah. For the whole family can fit.
That is beautiful.
Jonathan, you can get it too.
That is beautiful. Thank you, Greg.
No problem. We gotta take a picture in front of it for sure.
He's such a nice person.
Got a sunroof, Mom?
I see that.
Sunroof.
It's like too much. It's too much. Come and sit. Oh yeah, you could hook up my phone.
Yeah,
you want my phone?
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I'll show you how to hook it up. I'll come in there.
Okay. That is so nice.
You like it?
Yeah.
Okay, so you're gonna open that up.
Setting.
Yep, and I'm just gonna need you to get a couple signatures and sign, and then we'll get you guys on your way, okay?
Okay.
1, 2, 3. Perfect. 1, 2, 3.
I'm going slow because
I'm sorry. I love stories like that. Just because the fact of the matter is, look, first and foremost, if you ever seen a black mom, get something, first and foremost, if you don't tell her what it is and you record it, every black mom does this. My own mother does this. Because I remember one time we did a surprise for her and we didn't tell her we were recording it, and she came and the first thing she said, "And you got me out here." And was it with, you know what? I cracked up laughing because the moment she sat there and said, "Oh, this is for me and you got me on camera," and I'm like, what is it with black moms when you get them on camera? The first thing they check is their hair. It's like, you got me looking every which way. I'm sorry. That to me was the funniest thing. And I love stories like that because you can tell it was genuine. You can tell that he just wanted to do something for his mom, to sit there and say, for all this, for all your sacrifice, things of that nature, here, Mom, let me at least do this for you. Because I get it. Like, as kids, especially when your parents sacrifice a lot for you, you want to be able to sit there and say, once you've made it, that you want to go ahead and say, Mom or Dad, here, have this. Like I said, one of my dreams is that let these podcasts or let something else that I do get me that wonderful tax bracket where I can sit there and tell my parents, here's your own island, or here's your own beach house resort, or whatever that they wanted. I want to be able to sit there and say, here, Mom, this is for your sacrifice. It's my way of saying thank you. So I can have my mom sit there and go, and you got me on camera. I'm just saying, I'm looking forward to that day. But hopefully that did make you smile. It definitely made me smile. But that being said, we're actually going to do it for this podcast. Before I do get out of here, I do have to do some shameless plugging. And also, before I just do my shameless plugging, I want to thank you, everybody that liked, that commented, that shared, that let everybody know I was live. I appreciate that very so much. But before I do get out of here, I do have to do some shameless plugging. I did talk about my buddy, Big BZA. Who usually does his podcasting on Sundays and Tuesdays. I am talking about the Smoking Trailers podcast every Sunday from 6:30 to 9, in which he goes over a video game and movie trailers he finds interesting and therefore wants to share them with you. He also has the RAF, which is like America's Funniest Home Videos, except done by World Star. So it's definitely for the grown, not for kids. Every Tuesday from 6:30 to 9 p.m. He also has a video game podcast a video game streaming podcast called Making Plays, in which he does play games on PlayStation Network. I'm so proud of him. That is also live, but you want to know when it's live and other announcements, please check him out either on Westwood on Facebook or BigBZA on all socials. Also, let me not forget my other brothers from different mothers out there, Ari and Gee, present Geek Salad. They are also a part of the podcast, podcast people we're trying to network with, that they do their own, they actually have their own podcast with everything about blurs and geekdom and just all things fandom. Between Ari and Gee, both actually do talk about, so I always want to give them a shout out and definitely check them out. They're on Facebook or YouTube. And finally, myself, the link at the bottom, you copy and paste that into your browser, will take you to my link tree for the podcast Facebook group for my podcast, for their own Facebook and YouTube groups. How the Frack We Got Here, Offense Podcast, and Get Bit Podcast. Slight programming note, because of Shang-Chi coming out this weekend, or actually I said it's been out since Thursday, me and Joe will have another special Sunday edition of Get Bit at 8 p.m. on Sunday, September the 5th. Just because we want to cover Shang-Chi, but we're only going to give non-spoiler reviews of it. So definitely check us out tomorrow, September 5th at 8 p.m. on Facebook Live, which will also be posted to YouTube later. So, with that being said, guys, again, COVID-19 is real. The Delta variant is real. If you haven't got your vaccination, please do so. What are you waiting for? Please wear a mask when you go out these days, because at this point, the cases are high. ICU capacity is at an all-time low. Trust me, I know that from personal experience from taking loved ones to the hospital lately. That also being said, guys, please do so. It's not just about you anymore. Whatever you do affects others. So let's do the right thing and get us all protected so we can get these cases down and get back to some sense of normalcy, because we'll never get back to what we used to, so we just need to accept that. But the last thing I'll say about how the Frack We Got Here, it's all about staying informed. We are not trying to change minds. We're not trying to persuade people. We are simply just doing what news stations of old try to do. Give you all the information, allow you to make up your own mind. We do a lot better once we're informed. We're progressive. We move forward. We do the things that we should have done a long time ago by writing history and basically move forward as a country, getting past those ideals and issues that we should have done a long time ago. We cannot call ourselves progressive unless we make progressive movements, like electing our first Madam Vice President who is black. Still for Michelle Obama in 2024. We need you now, Michelle, more than ever. But that being said, guys, I do thank you all for watching. I do thank for those that commented. If you're watching this on the playback, please comment if this is live. I still want to know your opinion on a lot of things we covered. And aside from that, guys, please take care of yourselves and each other, and we will get through this. Peace.